Let me let Lisa jump in here. And
well,
get
I think what my colleague has pointed out is the very problem that we see. Pakistan is living in a world from 25 years ago. He talks about how the U.S. and Pakistan both supported Jalaluddin Haqqani, the leader of the Haqqani network. His son is Sirajuddin Haqqani, and how we both supported them to oust the Soviets from Afghanistan in the 1980s. The world has moved on. We had a minor event about 12 years ago called the 9/11 attacks, where 3,000 U.S. citizens were killed. The biggest attack ever on U.S. soil. And, you know, Pakistan has remained with the same policies it's had from 25 years ago. The U.S. is fighting the Haqqani network in Afghanistan. Some of the fiercest attacks against U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan have come from the Haqqani network. So, you know, it's clear that we have fundamentally different positions on how to deal with this problem.
Well, what about the ISI? You know, there's been examples where the U.S. has actually given the ISI, the Pakistani military, information, and they've tipped off the Haqqanis. I mean, they say that this happens. They really, there's a level of distrust on the side of the West working with the ISI.
Well, if you can see the way the work is happening, Haqqani network is based in northern Waziristan. If you can see geographically, northern Waziristan is 100 miles from Kabul. And the northwest, Waziristan whole stretch is 20 miles wide. So if a terrorist is coming from northern Waziristan and he's going to Kabul, he's traveling 100 miles into U.S., I would say, territory, because since U.S. is the military, it's the strongest military in there. If a terrorist is traveling with 100 miles inside of Afghanistan and is going to Kabul and doing some terrorist act, I think blame should be shared with the U.S. also, that how come these people are traveling under such a
Lisa a chance to respond to that.
Well, look, the issue is not whether Pakistan is fighting terrorists at all or helping the U.S. Clearly it is. There are cases that we can talk about where the U.S. and Pakistan work together to fight al-Qaeda, whether it's the capture of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the mastermind of 9/11, Abu Zubaydah, several others. So clearly the U.S. and Pakistan are working together against terrorists, and that's why we still have a relationship. The funding is still going despite all the problems. But at the same time, we have not seen Pakistan go after the Haqqani network sanctuaries that we know are in North Waziristan. And, you know, my colleague has said that the U.S. is responsible once they cross into Afghanistan, but if that's the case, then Pakistan needs to be responsible when these terrorists are on its territory. But unfortunately, despite the Obama administration trying over the last 3.5 years to convince Pakistan to take on these sanctuaries, they have not done so. They've resisted doing so, and that is why the U.S. must continue to rely on the drone strikes that do cause problems between our two countries, but it's the least bad option the U.S. has.
Let me stop you there, because the leader of his party says that the United States is actually creating a Frankenstein, that this is radicalizing the people, these drone attacks, and it's actually not helping the situation much. So let me give you a chance to respond to that, and then I want Yaser to jump in as well. Do you think that that's one of the offshoots of this, is that people are becoming more radicalized because they're upset that civilians are being killed with these drone attacks?
Actually, from my understanding, is that people who live in the tribal areas, they are not unhappy about these drone strikes because they know that they are getting rid of the terrorists who are a danger to them as well. So from my understanding, people on the ground understand the importance of the drone strikes, and they have taken out people like Baitullah Masood, the leader of the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, which is attacking Pakistan every day, attacking civilians and security forces. So I think there is understanding among the people at the local level that these drone strikes are actually helpful. But the problem is, I think, the way they are played in the media which is very much influenced by the military and the ISI, as taking on an anti-American
Let me jump into that.
I got to give him a chance to jump in here.
The way the drone attacks are, I have some facts here. They had a total of 305 drone attacks which happened since 2005, out of which, according to the very conservative figures, 1,500 to 3,000 people have died, of which they are saying around 63 to 400 were terrorists, or they had some figures on that. There were 200 children who died in those attacks, and over 1,400 civilians which died on that attacks. Now, let me just give you an idea. You're living here in DC, and you have a drone flying over you for 24/7, and you don't know when it is going to hit. And I can't understand when my colleague says that the people are happy, people are not happy. People are demonstrating there, and that is the very fact which is creating the more terrorists. If you see, we had around 300 suicide attacks. Pakistan had no suicide attack before 9/11. Once USA came into Afghanistan, they have disturbed a hornet's nest. And all those terrorists, because they did a bad job starting the war, they were in a haste to start after the war in Afghanistan, and then they forgot about it and they went to Iraq. And all those terrorists, they came into Pakistan. There was no terrorists in Pakistan before 9/11, according to USA. And
we're just about out of time. Let me ask you this, Lisa. You've been in that region. You know it well. What's the way forward?
Well, look, I think my colleague is right. Pakistan has suffered more terrorist attacks than probably any other country in the world. But I would argue that's not because the U.S. has invaded Afghanistan and overturned Taliban rule there. It is because the Pakistan military has not developed a comprehensive and consistent policy against all terrorists that reside on their territory. They are supporting some, fighting others, and the strategy doesn't work. It's backfiring on Pakistan. And, I think it's in the interest of both countries to work together to fight this problem. And only when we come together and agree on the way forward will we have a satisfying relationship for both countries.
Well, we've run out of dialogue on this broadcast. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Yaser, Lisa, thanks so much for coming by. It's a complicated issue. We appreciate your insights.